They invited her to dinner, with wine, candlelight, and paperwork hidden in a linen folder. Delia Monroe, widow and lifelong co-signer, smiled through the scallops and waited. Travis and Maya toasted new beginnings. By dessert, they asked her to sign away the house. By morning, she'd pulled her name, her money, and every legal tie they thought she'd forgotten. They wanted independence. She gave it to them, interest included. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and sealed with a gold wax stamp. Delia had stared at it for 20 minutes before sliding a butter knife under the flap. It wasn't a wedding, not a fundraiser, not a holiday gathering. It was a dinner invitation from Travis and Maya. Delia, Carla muttered, squinting at the embossed card from across the kitchen counter. Out of the blue like this, they need something. Delia didn't respond. The kettle shrieked on the stove. She turned off the burner, poured water over the tea bag, and watched the steam curl around the edge of her chipped mug. The smell of mint and memory filled the room. They hadn't spoken in almost 9 months, not since that night, the night everything collapsed in on itself like a dying star. Now they wanted dinner, on a rooftop, with a view. The restaurant was the kind of place where the lights were low and the smiles were curated. Crystal glasses clinked softly around her as a jazz trio played in the corner. Delia walked in wearing a black jumpsuit and red lipstick, armor disguised as elegance. She spotted them immediately. Maya stood as if on cue, arms open but body stiff. "Delia? So glad you could make it," she said, brushing her cheek lightly against Delia's without letting their bodies touch. "We know how hard it must be." There it was. Delia nodded once. "Thank you for the invite." Travis looked sheepish. He reached for her chair, pulling it out like a nervous waiter. "We just wanted to do something nice for you," he said, sitting across from her. "You've done enough." The words hung in the air like perfume sprayed in a closed room, sweet at first, then suffocating. Delia smiled politely. "It's a beautiful place." She meant it as a shield. They took it as surrender. Sophie arrived late, slipping into the chair next to Delia with a too-quick smile and flushed cheeks. Her eyes darted between the three of them. "Traffic," she offered, though no one had asked. Maya flagged the waiter without looking. "Let's do a bottle of the Barolo," she said, glancing at Travis for approval. Delia studied the table's polished surface. She could see her own reflection in it, distorted, distant. "So," Maya began, placing her napkin delicately in her lap, "how have you been holding up?" Delia turned her head slowly, met Maya's eyes, and blinked once. "Just fine." That answer was true and not true, all at once. "Good," Travis said too quickly. "We weren't sure if you were still at the old apartment." "I am." Silence settled over them like a second tablecloth. The waiter arrived with the wine, glasses filled, smiles forced. Carla's warning echoed in her head. They need something. The food was beautiful, plated like a painting. Halibut with citrus beurre blanc, charred broccolini, scallops balanced atop a smear of parsnip puree. But it all tasted like wet paper to Delia. The only real flavor was tension. Halfway through the meal, Maya finally exhaled. I guess I wanted to clear the air. We've all said things, done things, but that's not who we are." Delia tilted her head. "No?" Maya's voice wobbled, but she pressed on. "I miss what we had, before things got complicated." Travis reached for his wine but didn't drink. "There were misunderstandings," he added. "But we always cared about you." That word, misunderstandings. Like it was all a clerical error. Like betrayal could be walked back with pasta and Pinot. Delia didn't respond. She wiped her mouth with her napkin and took a slow sip of wine. Next to her, Sophie leaned in, her voice barely audible under the table chatter and clinking silver. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, her breath shaky. "I'm sorry." Delia's heart flicked once, then steadied. "Isn't it?" she murmured. Sophie's hand trembled as she set down her fork. "You don't know everything. I didn't have a choice." Delia looked at her then, really looked. And in Sophie's eyes, she saw something the others couldn't fake. Guilt. Not the polished performative kind, the kind that stains. Before she could speak, Travis cleared his throat. We wanted to talk to you, he began. Actually, ask you something important. Delia turned her gaze back to him, to Maya, both of them suddenly too still, too rehearsed. And just as Travis opened his mouth to continue, the rooftop lights flickered. Once, twice. Then everything went dark. The darkness lingered just long enough to feel intentional. A murmur spread across the rooftop, nervous laughter, a clink of silverware dropped on stone tile. Then the backup generators kicked in with a quiet hum, and the lights fluttered back to life. But something had already shifted. Travis cleared his throat again, but whatever false sincerity had been building in his throat fizzled under the weight of the silence. Delia spoke first. So, what is it you wanted to ask me? Neither of them answered right away. Maya dabbed at her lip with her napkin, like she'd spilled something, then forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We were just thinking, Travis started, that it might be a good time to revisit some of the arrangements, just to simplify things, clean things up. Delia tilted her head, every muscle in her body still but alert. Which arrangements? Maya jumped in, her voice syrupy smooth. The house. You know how much it's meant to us. And now that things are stable, Travis is working again, and we've refinanced. We thought it might be best to, remove your name from the deed. There it was. The air felt heavier now, like someone had draped the table in wet velvet. Sophie shrank back in her chair. Delia's expression didn't change. Interesting, she said softly. Maya took that as permission to continue. It's not personal. You've been incredibly generous. But we really want the house to feel fully ours, you know? Symbolically. Delia stared at her, unblinking. Symbolism's expensive. Travis shifted in his seat. It's not like that, it's just, at this point, you're not really involved. It doesn't make sense for your name to still be attached to everything. Delia set her glass down with deliberate care. I'm not involved, she repeated. But I'm still paying. Travis opened his mouth, then shut it. Maya's cheeks flushed. The payments come from the escrow, which is funded by my trust, Delia interrupted. You think that account replenishes itself? The word trust landed like a brick on the table. Everyone flinched. She leaned forward slightly, voice low and steady. I co-signed that mortgage because Travis begged me to. Quietly, discreetly. You promised I wouldn't be dragged into anything. Now I'm a line item buried under your fantasy of independence. Delia, Maya said quickly, it's not about that. We thought you understood. What I understand, Delia cut in, is that you call it your success story. Redecorate every time the wind changes direction, and smile like you climbed the mountain on your own. No one said a word. Even the jazz trio had gone quiet during the power cut and hadn't resumed. Sophie whispered, I told them it wasn't fair to ask. Delia didn't look at her. Her eyes were on Travis now. I didn't make a fuss, she said. Not when the closing costs doubled. Not when you borrowed from the emergency fund to cover landscaping. Not when Maya ordered Italian marble because granite was, what was it? Emotionally uninspiring. Maya paled. That's not, and I definitely didn't say a word when you used the guest house as an Airbnb behind my back. Travis looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Delia sat back. You don't want to clean things up. You want to erase the only person who kept your dream from foreclosing. Another beat of silence, and then, like a whip crack, Delia's phone vibrated on the table. One buzz, then another. She picked it up slowly, glancing at the screen. Reed Miller, ESQ, her lawyer. She unlocked it and read the preview text silently. Then her mouth twitched, just barely. Something wrong? Maya asked. Delia looked up. Her tone was flat. Reed says I can revoke my co-signer agreement anytime, legally, entirely. Travis's face drained of color. Maya blinked rapidly. But why would you, Delia? This is our home. No, Delia said calmly. It's my collateral, she stood. I'll let you know what I decide, symbolically. As she turned to leave, Sophie reached for her wrist. Wait, please. There's more you don't know. About what they did. About the night. Delia stopped. Sophie's eyes were glassy now, wide with a panic she couldn't hide anymore. It wasn't just the money. They used you. Delia said nothing. Then Sophie's voice cracked. They used me too. The glow of Delia's laptop lit her face in the darkness of her apartment, casting blue shadows on the walls around her. The clock read 2:46 a.m., but she wasn't tired. Her fingers moved steadily, deliberately, across the trackpad. Download, print, download, print. Mortgage statement after mortgage statement, each one bearing her name like a scar, etched in ink. Escrow withdrawals, trust disbursements, property taxes, late penalties that got waived. The paper trail was long, and it never lied. Travis and Maya had built their success story on the foundation of her silence and her money. The printer in the corner hummed steadily, spitting out page after page like confessionals. In the morning, Carla showed up with coffee and a manila folder thick with highlighters and sticky tabs. Delia opened the door wordlessly, and Carla stepped inside, eyes scanning the dining room table, already buried under a forest of paper. Carla raised one brow. "So, we're done pretending," Delia offered a tired smile. "Done letting them rewrite the ending." For the next 2 hours, they sorted the statements by year. Carla labeled a clean white binder in her neat block handwriting. Monroe Residence. Payment history. Delia flipped through the organized pages like she was studying for trial. Each tab a memory, each withdrawal a boundary crossed. "This one," Carla said, tapping a highlighted line. "That landscaping bill. Wasn't that the month you skipped your trip to Santa Fe?" Delia nodded. "They needed a retaining wall. Said erosion was risking the foundation." Carla muttered. "So poetic, the way they destroy while pretending to stabilize." Delia didn't laugh. She was past humor now. She was holding her breath underwater, and she'd finally found the surface. Reed's office was glass and steel and barely padded chairs. He looked up from the binder without flinching. "Well," he said, "you've got them dead to rights." "I don't want to destroy them," Delia said. "Just reclaim what's mine." Reed tapped his pen against the legal pad. "You're listed as a contributing party on the escrow. We can terminate your authorization with a single filing. Takes about 3 business days. "Make it disappear," Delia said. He nodded. "You'll need to notify the bank." "I'll do it today." As she left his office, her phone buzzed again. Not Travis. Not Maya. Sophie. She didn't answer. The bank smelled of new carpet and old decisions. Eli, the account manager, recognized her on sight. He stood when she approached his desk. "Ms. Monroe, I wasn't expecting you in person." Delia smiled politely. "I wanted to look someone in the eye when I closed this chapter." Eli gestured to the seat. "We can terminate the payment link on your word. Your trust will no longer fund their escrow, effective immediately. No delay?" "No delay." Delia reached into her bag, pulled out the binder, and slid it across the desk. "I'd like this filed to the account for record." Eli's brow furrowed as he opened it, flipping through the organized history. "They told us you were just a silent endorser." "They lie beautifully," she replied, "but not better than I document." Eli looked up, face unreadable. "It'll be handled." Delia exhaled as she stood. "Make sure it disappears." That night, as the city blinked against the autumn wind, a soft knock came at Delia's door. She opened it to find Sophie standing there with a Tupperware container and her eyes swollen from crying. "I brought dinner," she said quickly. "It's from my grandmother. Mac and cheese and cornbread." Delia hesitated. "They don't know I'm here," Sophie added. Delia stepped aside. Sophie moved quietly through the doorway like she was entering a confessional. They sat in silence for a moment before Delia broke it. "Why now?" Sophie set the container down and rubbed her palms over her jeans. "Because I owe you the truth. The whole thing." Delia crossed her arms. "Start with the night it all changed." Sophie looked up, lips parted. "I was there, Delia. In the room. The night you thought Travis had your back." Delia didn't move. Sophie's voice cracked again. "He told Maya you were useful, not family. And then, they made a deal. One you never saw coming." Delia stood at the edge of the newly remodeled kitchen, fingers wrapped loosely around a stemless glass of Chardonnay. The walls gleamed a sterile white, with matte black fixtures and imported tile that looked like stone but whispered expensive. Maya moved around the kitchen like she was hosting a network show, opening drawers just to show the soft close feature, trailing her fingertips over the waterfall countertop. "Quartzite," she announced to no one in particular. Imported from Brazil. 12 grand but worth every penny. Delia nodded once, as if admiring the lighting. Clean lines. Maya beamed. The dining room was already set. Candlelight, linen napkins, and deliberately mismatched vintage plates. Delia recognized most of it from the restoration catalogs she used to circle for Maya, back when money was tight and dreams came second. Now the house smelled like citrus and rosemary, a curated scent pumped through an oil diffuser hidden behind a vase of pale, pink peonies. Travis stepped into the room with a bottle of red and that same boyish smile he wore when charm was his only currency. "So glad you could make it," he said, already pouring. "Wouldn't miss it," Delia replied, her voice smooth, even. He held up his glass like a man making a toast in a mirror. "Here's to clean slates." Carla, seated across the table, arched a brow. "That what we're calling it?" Travis chuckled and shrugged. "Just nice to be in a place where we're standing on our own again, you know? That old support stuff. We've moved past it." Maya chimed in, slicing into the salmon. "Feels good to finally say this home is truly ours." Delia kept her expression neutral, chewing slowly, then lifting her glass. "Of course," she said. "You've earned it." The table fell quiet for a beat, just long enough for the hum of the fridge to fill the room. Carla tilted her head, watching Delia like a hawk scanning for tremors. "You didn't say a word," she murmured, once they stepped onto the patio after dinner. Delia swirled what remained of her wine, watching it catch the backyard lights. "Why would I?" Because they were speaking fiction. Delia turned to her, eyes cool and unbothered. "Exactly, and I was holding the plot twist." Carla let out a breath, part laugh, part warning. "You scare me when you smile like that." "Good." The sound of laughter floated from inside. Maya and Travis, back to performing for themselves. Their house was a stage now. Every chair fluffed, every story varnished to gleam. "They're in love with the illusion," Delia said. "That's fine. I've kept every receipt." "And you cut the payments." "Last week. They're probably too busy Instagramming Backsplash to notice the account's dry." "You're playing with a live wire." "I'm holding it," Delia corrected, very carefully. Carla fell silent. The stars blinked above them, quiet spectators to the unraveling. Delia finished her wine, setting the glass down on the stone ledge with precision. "I want to see what happens when the power gets cut, and no one's there to flip the switch." Inside, Travis was pulling out an old photo album, one Delia had gifted Maya 3 Christmases ago. He was showing guests pictures of the early days, back when the living room still had folding chairs and hope stapled to the walls. Delia watched through the glass. They didn't know, not yet, but the wire had already been pulled. She turned back to Carla. "Did Sophie tell you everything?" Carla nodded once. "She's wrecked, keeps replaying it. The night, the conversation. She's not just sorry, she's terrified." "Good," Delia said softly. "She should be." Carla didn't ask what came next. She didn't have to. They heard Maya's voice through the open door. "We're lucky we had each other through the hard times. Not everyone's as blessed." Delia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "No," she whispered. "Not everyone leaves with the house and someone else's credit." As they walked back inside, the lights flickered again. Just once, a subtle blink. Delia noticed, and so did Travis. He looked up, eyes narrowing faintly. But Delia was already smiling, calm and glassy. The lights steadied. For now, the call came just after 10 p.m., when Delia was curled up on the couch with a glass of rye and a notebook full of quiet plans. Her phone vibrated twice. Maya, 2 missed calls, then buzzed again. She let it ring to the very last second before answering, her voice calm, deliberate. "Delia," Maya exhaled, her voice breathless and tinny through the speaker. Did you stop something?" "The bank's saying our mortgage hasn't been paid." Delia took a slow sip of her drink, watching the amber swirl in the glass. "You said you were standing on your own," she replied. "So I stepped aside." Silence. Then a flurry of static-laced panic. "But they said the account was linked." "It's always been," Travis thought. "I know what Travis thought," Delia cut in. Another pause. The sound of someone else talking in the background. Travis, shouting now. Maya's voice snapped back in, raw and frantic. "This could screw everything up. We already spent." "Delia, why wouldn't you warn us?" Delia stood, crossing to the window. The street outside was quiet, controlled, exactly the way she liked it. I'm not in the business of warning people who pretend I don't exist. Maya lowered her voice. We thought that account was just passive. You said you weren't involved. I wasn't, Delia said, but my money was. She hung up. The next morning, Travis called twice. Delia didn't pick up. At 9:18 a.m., he left a voicemail. The first 60 seconds were stress-slicked apologies. The next 30, an attempt at charm. And the last 10, desperation. Delia saved it to her estate binder under the tab, Aftermath. By noon, Eli from the bank sent over a confirmation file. No mortgage payments processed since cancellation. No overdraft protection, no backup escrow. Just silence and a ticking clock. At 2:06 p.m., she met Reed in his office again. He handed her a new folder, thick with documentation. Congratulations, he said. You're officially free of all liability tied to the Monroe property. All authorizations revoked. You own nothing, owe nothing, and no longer stand between them and the consequences. Delia flipped the folder open, scanned the signatures. Her name. Clean. Untethered. Feels like closing a tab you didn't run up, she murmured. Reed smiled faintly. You ever think about suing for repayment? Delia shut the folder. I'm not after repayment. I'm after revelation, he nodded. That's cleaner than revenge. It's not, she said. It just stains less. Carla was waiting for her at the cafe near the courthouse, sipping an iced coffee with lemon like she had nowhere to be. Delia slid into the seat across from her and passed the binder across the table. Estate copies updated. Everything's clear. Carla flipped through the tabs, nodding. So that's it. No more legal threads. No more backdoor debit pulls. Nope. Which means, Delia raised an eyebrow, which means they're on their own. Like they said. Carla closed the binder. You didn't cut them off. Delia smirked. They were never holding the cord. Outside, a gust of wind kicked up fallen leaves. Delia watched them swirl against the glass like confetti from some invisible celebration. Carla leaned in. What happens when the next payment's due and nothing clears? They scramble, they blame each other, maybe they refinance, maybe they don't. And you? I don't return calls. Carla grinned. You know Maya's going to spin this like it's a bank error. She's welcome to try, Delia said, rising. But I documented everything, even the lies. That evening, Delia lit a single candle in her kitchen and opened the notebook she'd left half full for months, the one labeled After. She flipped past the budget pages, the legal notes, the scrawled grocery lists, stopped on a blank sheet, wrote a name, then another. Her phone buzzed again. Sophie this time, she answered. Delia, Sophie said, her voice cautious. I thought you should know. Maya's been calling everyone. She's saying there's been some banking glitch, that they're victims of a clerical error. Delia leaned against the counter, unsurprised. She's crying on calls, Sophie continued. Travis is threatening to sue the bank, but I overheard something. What? They're behind on 2 other payments. Credit cards. The kitchen remodel maxed them out. Delia was silent. Delia? Let them run, she said calmly. The crash teaches more than the climb ever did. Sophie hesitated. There's something else. Maya's trying to find out if you intentionally sabotaged them. She's calling Reed next. Delia's gaze sharpened. She won't reach him, she said. He only takes calls from clients. Another pause. Then Sophie quietly. You're scaring her. Delia's voice was even, unreadable. Good. The hold music on the bank's customer service line was the only sound in Travis's study, save for his uneven breathing and the muted thud of his fingers against the edge of the desk. When Eli picked up, Travis jumped in fast. There's clearly been a system error. The payments should have processed. This must be technical. On the other end, Eli's tone was calm and maddeningly factual. It's not technical, Mr. Beckett. It's financial. Travis's jaw clenched. That escrow account has always covered the payments. It was deauthorized by the trustee last week, Eli replied. All parties were notified. No, Travis snapped. We weren't. There was a pause. Then, she was under no obligation to notify you. Travis exhaled through his nose. This is insane, another pause. Then Eli, neutral as a judge. No, sir, it's documented. Maya's version of panic came dressed in silk robes and whispered behind closed doors. That afternoon, she sat on the edge of their plush sectional, phone in hand, voice sweet and trembling as she called Reed's office. "She's been off lately," Maya said softly. "It wouldn't surprise me if this was just a miscommunication. You know, stress. She hasn't been well. Sometimes she forgets." Reed's assistant didn't answer that, just confirmed receipt of her message and hung up. But the next day, a courier arrived at Maya and Travis's door. Inside a sleek envelope was a notarized letter, typed, signed, certified. Delia Monroe, cognitive evaluation, past mental status, fully lucid, self-directed, financially independent evaluator, Dr. H. Linton, MD, Neurological Assessment Division. Date, 3 weeks prior. Travis read it first. Maya read it twice. There was a second sheet stapled to the back. Authorization for filing, future estate disputes. Filed by Reed Miller, Escark. Maya's fingers curled around the edge of the paper. She knew we'd try to twist it. Travis didn't answer. He just stared at the fireplace. No flame lit, nothing warm left. "She's making us look like villains," Maya whispered. Travis turned to her, eyes dull. "We don't need her help for that." Delia sat at her kitchen table in slippers and a cashmere wrap, cross-referencing labels in her estate binder. Every tab was printed twice, one for her, one for Reed. When she received the digital delivery confirmation from the courier service, she didn't smile. She just checked the box on her list titled Narrative Preemption, Mental Competency. Her phone buzzed. "Sophie, they're spiraling. It's getting bad. Travis thinks Eli's working with you. Maya's convinced you've had this planned for years." Delia stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed one word. "Good." Seconds later, another message. "Sophie, they're going to try to come to your place. I heard them talking. You should know." Delia didn't reply. She opened the side drawer of the console table near her door and removed the small black remote connected to the smart lock system. She toggled the setting from notify to deny. The next visitor wouldn't make it past the gate. Later that evening, Carla dropped by with soup and sarcasm. "Just came from the market," she said, placing the bag on the counter. "Ran into Maya." Delia raised an eyebrow. "And?" "She looked like someone canceled her spa credit card mid-facial." Delia poured tea. "They're digging now. Trying to reframe everything." Carla leaned against the fridge. "They're calling this default unfair." "It is," Delia said, deadpan. "Unfair that it took this long." Carla watched her for a moment. "You okay?" Delia nodded. "I'm fine, because I think they're getting desperate." Delia set the tea down and folded her hands neatly in her lap. Desperate people reveal themselves. Desperate people leave evidence. Carla smirked. "You're 5 moves ahead." "No," Delia said. "I'm exactly where they tried to bury me." A beat. Then Carla softly. "What if they go public?" Delia's gaze didn't flinch. "Then we show them what receipts look like under daylight." At 10:03 p.m., Delia's phone lit up one last time. Unknown caller. She let it go to voicemail, then played it once, Maya's voice, cracking. "Delia, we're going to lose the house. You can't do this. Please call me back. We're drowning." Click. Delia saved it, then renamed the file. 6 weeks after Independence, and underlined it in red. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. Thick, unforgiving, certified. It sat on the welcome mat of the Monroe residence like a tombstone no one wanted to claim. Maya spotted it first. She cracked open the front door and stared down at the oversized white rectangle. Its edges creased from travel. No logo, no warmth. Just her name, and Travis's. Typed in all caps, centered and clean. She bent down slowly, as if the paper might snap at her fingers. Inside, Travis was already pacing. Shirt wrinkled, sleeves rolled up, voice hoarse from 2 days of arguing with bank reps who no longer returned calls. Maya stepped into the kitchen and handed him the envelope like it was radioactive. He tore it open. 3 pages, 1 headline. Notice of foreclosure. Intent to repossess. Travis scanned the document once, then again, eyes snagging on the lines he didn't want to read. Cosigner, Delia Monroe, escrow. Funding party, Delia Monroe, lien protection clause, active revocation date, filed and executed. His jaw slackened. She's still on the note, he muttered. Maya leaned over his shoulder. No, that's not. She can't be. She revoked it. She said. She was always on it, he said, voice dull. We were just too stupid to read past the first page. Maya staggered back like she'd been slapped. She wouldn't do this. She can't. The words fell out of her like prayer, like bargaining. A soft knock interrupted them. Sophie stood in the doorway, hesitant, eyes rimmed in guilt. Travis glared. Did you know? Sophie stepped inside. She didn't do this. Maya's voice turned sharp. Then who did? You did, Sophie said. The moment you pretended she didn't matter. The moment you lied to the bank. The moment you turned a silent partner into a footnote. Travis scoffed, bitter. She didn't have to go nuclear. Sophie shook her head. She didn't go nuclear. She just stopped covering your fire. Across town, Delia stirred honey into her tea and watched a slow rain slide down the kitchen window. Carla sat across from her, ankles crossed, hands wrapped around her own mug like she was watching a performance with front row seats. They got the notice? Carla asked. Delia nodded once. No more calls? No, they know it's real now. Carla exhaled through her nose. You know what I realized? What? They can't even afford Rage properly. Delia gave a soft smile. Rage is for people who still believe they're owed something. She stood, walked over to the cabinet, pulled down a second binder. Not red, not black, gray, neutral, final. Is that? Delia opened it, revealing copies of the original deed. The financing paperwork, the initial trust transfer. All highlighted, tabbed, indexed. They never read the fine print, she said. They just liked how it sounded. Carla sipped her tea. Success story. Outside, the rain thickened. At the Monroe residence, the silence had turned to strategy, or the remnants of it. Travis sat on the couch, the foreclosure document still in his lap, a legal defeat printed in Times New Roman. They're going to take it, he said. Maya stood near the window, arms folded tightly over her ribs. Not if we sell first. No one's buying a house 2 weeks from auction. Sophie sat at the edge of the kitchen stool, spine stiff. You used her name to build this place. You never owned it. Not really. Travis didn't look at her. I thought she'd never do it, he said, almost to himself. I thought she was always, Sophie interrupted. Until she wasn't. A long silence followed. Then Maya, softly. We should call her. Ask for time. No, Travis snapped. We've begged enough. Another silence. Then Sophie rose. She's not going to burn the house down. Maya looked up. She's going to let it evict you. That night, Delia opened her journal. She didn't write anything. Just flipped to the page she'd left blank on purpose. At the top she wrote, Loss is loudest when it's deserved. She closed the book and turned off her phone. The banks had stopped returning calls. Now they were sending emails. Dry, impersonal denials that opened with after careful review and ended with best of luck in future endeavors. Maya sat in her silk robe at the breakfast table, laptop open, her third refinance application rejected in less than 10 days. Debt-to-income ratio too volatile, she whispered aloud. Reading the line again, she didn't understand. She'd applied using her own credit this time. She'd rearranged the figures, left out the parts that would raise red flags. She thought her smile still counted for something. Across from her, Travis nursed black coffee like it was penance. His phone buzzed once, then went dark again. Another declined call. He didn't check who. We need a co-signer, Maya said flatly. We've burned everyone. Not everyone. She didn't need to say it. Travis stood, walked to the kitchen window, and stared out at the yard that once hosted charity brunches and curated cocktail parties. Now the grass was browning, the air felt heavier. She's not going to help. She might. You really think she'll pick up if I call? Maya hesitated. Try texting. Delia was at Carla's when the message came through. Travis Beckett. One last bridge? Just a signature. No involvement. We'll make it right this time. Carla looked over her shoulder as Delia read it. Wow, he still thinks you're in the lending business? Delia handed her the phone. Read the timestamp. Carla smirked. 8:07 a.m. sharp. Guess the bank opened and said no. Delia took the phone back, typed exactly one sentence. You torched it with the wine list. No sign-off, no warmth. She hit send. Carla laughed, low and impressed. You served silence colder than their steak tartare. I don't need heat, Delia said. I need closure. Later that afternoon, Reed met Delia at his office. Everything was already prepared. 2 stapled copies of a notarized affidavit titled Non-Responsibility Confirmation, Monroe Mortgage and Associated Lines of Credit, filed October 14th, affirming no current or future financial liability, oversight, or obligation. He slid the pages across the desk with his usual composure, then offered her a pen. You've already been scrubbed clean, he said. This is just salt in the soil. Delia signed without hesitation. What's next? He asked. She looked out the floor-to-ceiling window, the city grid below cast in a pale gold light. They fall, she said. I move forward. You don't want to see them hit the ground? Delia smiled faintly. They've already hit it. They just haven't heard the echo yet. Back at the Monroe residence, Travis sat staring at his phone, eyes unfocused. Maya walked in holding 2 manila folders, one marked secondary options, the other empty. She said no, Maya asked. He nodded. She even reply? He turned the phone toward her. Maya read the message. Her lips tightened. She's cruel. Travis set the phone down like it weighed too much. No, she's clear. For the first time, Maya's expression cracked, and her voice came out as a whisper. So that's it? Travis said nothing. They both knew. The cards were declined. The doors closed. The lights still on, but only for now. They had owned nothing. They had borrowed everything. And now there was no one left to borrow from. Delia returned home just before dusk. She lit a candle, opened a new page in her gray binder, wrote in clean block letters, "Final notice served. No return requested," then closed it. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. Sophie, they're listing the house online. No bites yet. Price dropped twice. Travis looks hollow. Maya's posting like nothing's wrong. Delia didn't reply. Instead, she scrolled to her saved voicemail folder, played one. Maya's voice, soft and cracking. Delia, we're going to lose the house. You can't do this. Please call me back. We're drowning. Click. She deleted it. No more souvenirs. The news came from Sophie first. Her text arrived before sunrise, the gray light leaking across Delia's kitchen counter like fog. Sophie, they're pretending it's a planned move. Said they're downsizing. Delia stirred sugar into her coffee without answering. The word downsizing tasted like varnish. An attempt to make rot sound modern. A second message followed. Sophie, realtor says auctions in 12 days. They told the neighbors it's a strategic relocation. Delia typed back only one word. Expected. Carla arrived a few hours later, wind-chapped and carrying croissants. She didn't even sit before speaking. So, she said, our favorite fiction writers are at it again. Delia poured her tea. They're trying to save face. Carla smirked. Every lie has an open house eventually. Delia smiled at that. Brief, genuine. Then her phone buzzed again, this time a new thread from Reed's office. Subject line, status update, Beckett property. She opened it, read slowly, foreclosure proceedings irreversible, auction date confirmed. Your legal and financial responsibility, 0. Delia exhaled through her nose. The smallest release of months held tight. Across town, the Monroe residence had begun to feel like a stage under dismantling. Half-packed boxes lined the hallway. The sound of tape tearing across cardboard filled the air like applause no one wanted. Travis sat on the floor surrounded by printouts. Emails from lenders, notices, timelines. Each one said the same thing, timeline locked. He rubbed his temples. We can pull the listing. If we show we're making progress, maybe they'll stall. Maya hovered near the window, phone pressed to her ear. That's what I'm trying to, yes, I know, but if we pay part now. Her voice faltered. We can't pay it all. A pause. Then the sharp, bureaucratic tone of the lender rep bleeding through the speaker. Ma'am, the account has been processed for public sale. The timeline cannot be altered. Maya's hand shook as she ended the call. Travis looked up at her. So that's it? Her voice came out small. It was the moment she walked away. He laughed once, bitter and thin. She'll love this, watching us collapse. But even he didn't believe that. At Reed's office, Delia signed the final confirmation packet. Reed watched her initial each page with the calm of someone finishing a very long chapter. You're fully clear, he said. No financial or legal claim can reach you now, not even in review. Delia slid the papers back across the desk. Good. He hesitated. You don't have to watch the auction, you know. She looked at him evenly. I'm not watching a sale. I'm watching a reckoning. Reed nodded, understanding. Eli wanted me to pass along confirmation from the bank as well. He handed her a thin envelope. Inside was a single sheet with the header Escrow Termination Summary. At the bottom, one line in bold. Co-signer liability, 0.0 USD. Delia folded it neatly, placed it into her gray binder, and said quietly, That's the first zero that ever felt like a fortune. Sophie met her later that afternoon at the corner cafe. She looked anxious, eyes darting toward every window as if someone might overhear. They're unraveling fast, she said. Maya's been staging photos to make it look like they're renovating. Travis told his boss he's moving for a job promotion. Delia listened, stirring her drink. And the truth? They're weeks away from eviction. Delia tilted her head. Then truth is finally catching up. Sophie swallowed hard. They still think you'll change your mind. That maybe you'll... Delia cut in gently. I already did. Once. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain hitting the windows. Then Sophie reached into her bag and slid over a folded flyer. Found this online, she whispered. It was the official auction notice, printed in stark black type. Monroe Residence, 141 Hillcrest Drive. Public sale, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Delia stared at it, then folded it in half. Crisp and perfect. Let them have their open house, she said. They built it on borrowed ground. Carla's voice echoed in her memory. Every lie has an open house eventually. That night, Delia sat alone in her living room, candlelight flickering against the glass of her gray binder. She traced her finger over the spine, each section tabbed, dated, complete. A new email pinged. From Eli Turner, Westbridge Bank. Subject, final confirmation. Body, all cosigner accounts have been closed. Liability, 0. Thank you for your prompt compliance. She read it twice, then closed her laptop. Outside, thunder rolled over the city like the distant sound of a gavel. Delia leaned back in her chair, eyes calm, expression unreadable. 12 days left. And for once, the countdown belonged to someone else. The auction took 11 minutes. The opening bid came low. The next two came lower. By minute 9, it was clear. No one was buying a legacy, just a footprint. The lender accepted the final offer without pause. Settlement signed. Debt absorbed. Paperwork finalized. Travis didn't speak during the call. Maya signed in silence. The house at 141 Hillcrest Drive sold for $87,000 under market. All they got was 30 days. No fanfare. No farewell. Just a final date stamped in red. Vacate by November 10th. Delia didn't watch the live feed. She didn't need to. The moment Reed texted her, final sale confirmed. Title passed. You're out of it. Fully. She turned off her notifications. 2 days later, she drove past Hillcrest without slowing down. The windows were bare, the peonies gone. A single moving truck sat half full in the driveway. Travis stood at the edge of the lawn, phone in one hand, jaw set. Maya was nowhere in sight. Delia didn't look twice, didn't tap the brakes, just rolled past in the quiet hum of her hybrid. The road ahead long, clear, and paved in her own name. That evening, Carla showed up unannounced with a bottle of bourbon and a carton of takeout. They're packing up like the house has a virus, she said, toeing off her shoes. Neighbors are pretending they don't see it. Delia opened the box of dumplings. Maya still posting. Carla shook her head. Nothing in 3 days. Radio silence. Delia's eyebrow twitched. Carla grinned. It's not that they're broke. They're revealed. Delia leaned against the counter. Sometimes being unmasked is worse than being ruined. Carla poured them both a drink. You didn't burn it down. You just turned on the lights. Delia raised her glass and watched what scurried. They drank in silence for a moment. Not celebration, not vengeance. Just the sound of finality settling like dust in the corners of a clean room. Sophie's message came later that night. Sophie. It's done. They're out. New owners get keys tomorrow. They left in separate cars. Delia didn't reply. She opened her gray binder one last time, flipped to the final tab. Resolution. Inside. Final foreclosure document. Title transfer confirmation. Bank closure notice. Personal liability affidavit. A single sticky note. No return address. She placed Sophie's printed message in the pocket and shut the binder for good. It made a satisfying sound, like closure, like a lock clicking shut. Across town, Travis sat alone on the mattress they hadn't gotten around to moving. The walls echoed now. The house felt bigger without furniture, colder. He had called 4 people that day, left 6 voicemails. No one had called back. Maya was at her sister's, her social media still silent, her curated world gone dark. He looked around at the place they once called their forever home. It had always been Delia's scaffolding. They just painted over it. Now it was empty, and worse, forgettable. At dawn, Delia stood in her driveway, watching the light rise over her quiet neighborhood. Her house stood solid, paid in full, no shared names, no co-signers, no footnotes. Carla pulled up, window cracked. "How's it feel?" Delia smiled faintly. "Like mine." Carla handed her a manila envelope from Reed's office. "Final cert copy, for your records." Delia nodded and took it. Didn't even look inside. Behind her, the wind picked up. Leaves skittered across the porch. October moving forward, uncaring and precise. She opened the envelope anyway, just to be sure. Inside, Reed's note, handwritten. "They built their future on your past. Now you've reclaimed it." Delia folded the letter slowly, and this time she smiled. But just as she turned to go inside, her phone buzzed once. A new message. No name, just a number she hadn't seen in months. She opened it. "Unknown. I know what else they did. And I can prove it." The voicemail was only 42 seconds long, but Sophie played it twice. Delia sat at the kitchen table, the afternoon light slanting through the blinds in pale bars. The binder, gray, closed, final, rested beside her elbow. Sophie's voice wavered as she read from her phone. "Delia, it's me. We just need a conversation, please. The buyer's pulling out. There's confusion with the lender. We can fix this if you just call us back." She stopped, eyes flicking up. "There's more." Delia nodded once. "Go on." Sophie swallowed. "You know this isn't fair. You've made your point. We're begging you. Just call. Please." The recording ended with a click that felt louder than it should have. The house settled around them in the pause that followed. Delia reached for her tea, still warm. "Let them call the buyer," she said. "I don't own it anymore." Sophie lowered the phone. "They think you still do." "They always did," Delia said, softly. Ownership was their favorite delusion. She stood, crossed to the counter, and scrolled through her contacts. 2 names, Travis B. and Maya B., hovered there like old debts. She pressed and held each one until the option appeared. Block. Delete conversation. Gone. No ceremony. Just silence reclaiming space. Reed's office smelled faintly of lemon oil and copy paper when Delia stopped by that afternoon. The receptionist handed her a single sheet, stamped in blue. No contact directive. Estate of Delia Monroe. Filed. Current. Effective. Immediate. All incoming communications regarding previously held assets shall be redirected to Counsel of Record. Reed looked up from his desk. "That covers everything," he said. "No calls, no messages, no doorstep visits. If they try, it goes through me." Delia signed the line marked Client Authorization without hesitation. "Good," she said. "I don't like reruns." Reed smiled faintly. "You're not cruel, you know." "I'm consistent," he nodded. "That's rarer." That evening, Carla arrived just as the streetlights flickered on. She carried a small grocery bag and the sort of expression that came with opinions. "You really blocked them?" she asked as she unpacked oranges onto the counter. "Yes." "Both?" "Yes." Carla whistled low. "That's not cruelty. That's punctuation. Delia smiled, faint but real. You're always the poet. Carla poured them each a splash of wine, then leaned against the counter. You're not being cruel, she said finally. You're being finished. Delia swirled the glass. There's a difference. Exactly. They clinked their glasses together in the kind of toast that didn't need words. Later, Sophie appeared at the door, shoulders hunched against the wind. She looked younger somehow, unmoored, uncertain. Delia let her in without a question. I told them to stop calling, Sophie said, setting her bag down. They won't listen. They keep thinking you'll show mercy. Delia tilted her head. Mercy is an ode. It's chosen. Sophie studied her for a long time. You sleep better now? I sleep honestly. They moved into the living room. The candle from last night still sat unlit on the table between them. Sophie hesitated, then reached out and touched the binder. Can I stay with you this summer? She asked quietly. Just until I figure things out. Delia looked at her. The girl's eyes were clear, but rimmed with something heavier. Regret, maybe, or the beginning of a reckoning of her own. You can, Delia said. But I live by rules. I know. No lies. No debt I don't agree to. And no ghost from Hillcrest. Sophie nodded. Deal. Delia stood, opened the windows. The night air carried the smell of rain and cut grass, the kind of scent that promised change without fanfare. Behind her, Sophie exhaled, the sound halfway between relief and exhaustion. Carla's words echoed in Delia's mind. You're not being cruel. You're being finished. Finished, yes. But as the cool air swept through the house, Delia realized something else. Being finished didn't mean being done. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. A new notification. New email. Subject: Hillcrest documents. Unreleased. From the same unknown number that had texted her before. Delia's gaze lingered on the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Then she tapped it open. The email was long, 5 paragraphs, dense with apology and explanation, but by the end of the first sentence, Delia knew what it was. A letter that wanted to sound like evidence. She read it once, then again, eyes tracing every self-justifying line. We never meant for things to go that way. You misunderstood. There were pressures you didn't see. I hope someday you'll realize this wasn't betrayal, it was survival. It was signed only with initials. No attachments, no real confession. Sophie hovered near the doorway, laptop open. That's them, right? Delia nodded. Or someone writing on their behalf. Either way, it's noise. What will you do with it? Delia tapped the keyboard. A new folder blinked onto her desktop. Performative regret. She dragged the email inside, renamed the file. Hillcrest, unreleased letter, claims of misunderstanding. Then she clicked save. It proves nothing, she said quietly, but it fits the pattern. Sophie exhaled, tension loosening from her shoulders. You're archiving your past. Delia smiled without looking up. I'm quarantining it. The scanner whirred in rhythmic bursts as Sophie fed in each printed page. Emails, affidavits, closing documents. The digital hum filled the kitchen like distant cicadas. Delia labeled each file by date, exact time, and subject line. No emotion, just order. When the last page slid through, Sophie uploaded the folder to cloud storage. Backed up, she said. Encrypted. 2. Good, Delia said. Paper burns. Servers don't. They shared a small laugh, the kind that comes from relief rather than humor. Sophie shut the laptop. Are you ever going to answer them? No. Not even to say it's over? Delia looked up, eyes steady. Silence says it cleaner. Across town, Maya sat in the HR office of her company, a corporate mug of water sweating onto the desk. I'm requesting a temporary hardship extension, she said carefully, voice fragile but rehearsed. Personal circumstances, housing displacement, financial adjustment. The woman across from her clicked through forms on a screen, expression unreadable. I understand, the woman said, but you're not eligible. Hardship extensions are for medical or family emergencies. This doesn't qualify. Maya's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I worked here for 6 years. And you'll receive your final check on the 15th, the woman replied, polite as an automated message. Maya nodded, mechanical. Of course. Outside, she sat in her car and stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror until it blurred. The lipstick was perfect. The life wasn't. Travis's world shrank to night shifts and cash envelopes. He drove rideshare under an alias, kept his head down, told strangers his name was Trey. He'd lost count of how many times passengers glanced at him through the mirror and said, "You look familiar." He always smiled. I get that a lot. In the dim blue glow of the dashboard, he sometimes pictured Delia's handwriting, the precise way she signed her name. He hated that he remembered it. Back at Delia's, Carla arrived with her usual timing. No knock, just the sound of the front door clicking open and the faint jingle of her keys. "You get the letter?" she asked. Delia nodded, closing her laptop. "It's catalogued." Carla leaned against the doorway. "And?" "It proved nothing," Delia said. "Except that they still need an audience." Carla's grin was sharp. "Well, the show's canceled." Delia poured her tea, the faint clink of porcelain punctuating the calm. Carla studied her for a moment, then said softly, "You didn't bankrupt them, Delia. You just stopped funding the lie." Delia paused mid-pour, the words settling like dust motes in sunlight. That's the most accurate line of the whole story. They stood there in companionable quiet, the kind that only arrives when everything that needed to break already has. Sophie's voice called from the hallway. "Upload finished. Folder locked." "Perfect," Delia said. The rain began again outside, steady and soft. Carla reached for her coat. "So what now?" Delia glanced toward the window, where the lights of the city glowed against the storm. "Now we let the world do what it does best." "What's that?" "Forget." Carla smiled. "You really think they will?" "They'll have to." But when the house went quiet and everyone had gone, Delia checked her inbox one last time before bed. There, beneath the archived letter, beneath the receipts, was a new message. Subject: Archive compromised. Sender: unknown. Body: you shouldn't have deleted what wasn't yours to keep. Delia stared at it, unreadable. Then she reached for the gray binder, and for the first time since Hillcrest burned out of her life, her hand trembled. The trust paperwork sat on Reed's desk in a leather folder, thick with clauses and cautions. "Irrevocable," he said, tapping the page. "Once you sign this, it's hers. Locked. No retrieval, no revoking. Not even by you." Delia nodded. "Good." Reed hesitated. "You're sure?" "I don't build lifelines just to snip them." She signed the bottom of the final page. Reed countersigned, pressed the notary stamp, and slid the folder closed with a soft, decisive sound. Outside the office window, spring had started to thread its way into the trees. The city was still cold, but it was changing. Delia handed Sophie the envelope that night. No ceremony, no speech. Sophie unfolded the letter slowly, brow furrowing as she read. "You set up a trust?" she asked, stunned. "Yes." "For me," Delia nodded. "For your future." "But why?" "I don't need you to fix anything." Delia poured tea into the wide-bellied mugs they used now in the evenings. "It's not a fix." Sophie swallowed, still reading. "This says tuition, housing, living expenses, until I'm 28? "Longer if you stay in school," Delia said. "Or law, or whatever it turns into." Sophie looked up, eyes glassed with disbelief. "Is this because you feel—" "It's not guilt," Delia cut in, calm but firm. "It's belief." A long silence passed. Then Sophie nodded once, hard. "Then I won't waste it." Delia handed her a coaster. "Then we're settled." Carla brought over a blanket the next day. Hand-knit, thick and soft with a pattern of rising waves stitched in cream and gray. "For the only one who stayed," she said, folding it neatly across the foot of Sophie's new bed. "And the only one who didn't flinch when the lights came on." Sophie blushed. "I don't know what to say." Carla grinned. "Good. Saves us all the awkward crying part." They shared Chinese takeout and reruns in the living room that night. The warmth of normalcy breaking through the storm that had once gripped every corner of Delia's home. Summer settled in with slow mornings and honest routines. Delia worked in her office. Sophie studied on the back porch. They met each afternoon over tea and stories. Sometimes they'd go over old law journals together, Delia annotating the margins with dry wit and sharp corrections. Other times they'd take long walks through the neighborhood, past homes lined with fresh paint and cut grass. quiet reminders that destruction wasn't the only way to reclaim a life. Sophie asked questions, real ones. Why did you co-sign for them? Delia shrugged. Because I believed them. And when did you stop? When they stopped believing in me. They didn't speak much about Travis and Maya anymore. Not because it hurt, but because the silence finally belonged to someone else. One evening, Sophie stood in the hallway, holding a small stack of textbooks from the shelf in the study. You think I could actually do it? She asked. Law school? Delia glanced up from her cup. If you mean can, then yes. If you mean should, that's yours to decide. Sophie smiled. Feels strange, having a choice. Delia met her gaze. That's what the trust is for. Not the money, the option. Sophie nodded slowly. Then Delia added, almost to herself. She's the only legacy I recognize. Carla, who had arrived silently with groceries and half a bottle of wine, leaned against the wall. And a better one than they ever deserved. Delia didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Delia sat alone in her study, the soft click of the desk lamp breaking the quiet. She pulled out the gray binder again, not to edit, not to add, but to check. The tabs were still there. Resolution, aftermath, release, and the newest one, legacy. She placed a printout of the trust confirmation inside. Then she opened her inbox. The email from unknown still sat there, unopened. Archive compromised. You shouldn't have deleted what wasn't yours to keep. Delia clicked it open again. This time, there was an attachment. File name. Photos, Hillcrest 0519. Confidential. JPG. Her finger hovered over it, but just before she could download, another message came in. New subject. You missed one, and they buried it deep. The envelope from Reed arrived 2 days after the second anonymous email. Not the threatening kind. The legal kind, stitched tight with red string, marked hand-filed copy. Inside, Beckett et al. Viaja, estate of Delia Monroe, filed in probate court. Basis, contesting a trust agreement on grounds of undue influence and mental incompetence. Delia didn't flinch. She slid the packet across the table toward Sophie, who sat cross-legged on the couch, reading through a constitutional law primer. They're going after the trust, Delia said. Sophie's eyes narrowed. On what grounds? Same as always, Delia stood. They underestimated the ink. The hearing was scheduled within weeks. Fast-tracked, thanks to the airtight documentation Reed had already prepared in anticipation of this very stunt. On the morning of the proceeding, Reed laid it all out in 3 labeled binders. Exhibit A, timeline of payments, every deposit, withdrawal, escrow movement, co-signed, dated, and sealed. Exhibit B, property ownership, the deed history, loan statements, title certifications, the entire rise and fall of Hillcrest, printed in bold, indifferent type. Exhibit C, medical evaluation, 3 neurological assessments, notarized, all affirming the same thing. Delia Monroe is mentally competent, financially literate, and fully capable of executing independent legal decisions. She was lucid, Reed told the judge. She was generous. She was also the only adult in the room. Travis sat stiffly at the petitioner's table, jaw tight, suit borrowed. Maya looked smaller than usual, her eyes darting from Delia to the judge and back again. Like she still expected this to be a misunderstanding. It wasn't. Delia took the stand once. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tear up. She answered each question with calm precision, her tone steady as the judge's gavel. No, she said. I was not coerced. No, she repeated. I was not confused. Yes, she confirmed. I gave that money freely until I chose not to. And the trust? Delia looked directly at Travis and Maya, then back to the court. That's mine to give, and it's hers to keep. The ruling was swift. The judge flipped through the files, scribbled a few lines, then looked up with something between pity and exhaustion. There is no evidence of coercion, fraud, or incompetence, he said. The trust is valid. Contest dismissed, with prejudice. The courtroom air tightened like a string pulled taut. Oh, the judge added. And Mr. Beckett. Travis lifted his head. You're responsible for all court costs. Maya gasped softly. Travis didn't move. The gavel came down with a solid, echoing crack. Done. Back outside, Reed handed Delia a stamped copy of the ruling. She took it without looking. "Want a quote for your records?" he asked, almost smiling. "Already written," Delia replied. She turned to Sophie, who hadn't spoken since the ruling. "You okay?" Delia asked. Sophie blinked once, then nodded slowly. "I didn't think they'd get this far, but I should have known better." "You did," Delia said. "You just forgot." Sophie's voice came out softer. "They underestimated the ink." Delia tucked the ruling into her satchel and forgot who held the pen. That night, Carla brought sparkling water instead of bourbon. "Figured we were celebrating the clean way," she said, clinking glasses. They sat out back, the night soft and warm around them. Sophie had gone to bed early, books still open on the coffee table. Delia stretched her legs across the porch bench, gray binder resting at her side. "Do you think they'll try again?" Carla asked. Delia shook her head. They already played their last card. And it folded. They didn't have a hand. They were bluffing from the start. Carla raised her glass again. "To bluffers with bad memory." "To women with receipts," Delia replied. But when Delia stepped back inside that night, her phone buzzed with a new message. "Unknown. I warned you not to delete it. You didn't miss one. You buried it." Attachment, audio file, Tomb 47s. Title, Backyard Audio 0519 Raw 4A. Delia stared at the screen. The date, May 19th, was carved into her memory. The week everything started to unravel. She tapped download. The bar crawled slowly, and just as the file reached 100%, the screen flashed. Error. This file is not safe to open. Then her phone screen went black. The article ran on a Tuesday, small by design, hidden in a mid-tier journal focused on philanthropy and personal finance. No names, no direct locations. Just a headline that hummed with quiet fury. "When Help Becomes Hush Money." By Anonymous Contributor. Delia watched it gain quiet traction, passed between nonprofit boards, emailed among donor advisors, screenshotted in university listservs. Nothing viral, just steady exposure. She never claimed it, never would. But those who needed to know, knew. Carla read it 3 times. She dropped the printout onto Delia's kitchen island with a soft thwop and said, "Not all revenge needs names." Delia poured the coffee. "I didn't write it for them." "I know," Carla grinned. "You wrote it for the next woman who gets handed a napkin at a charity dinner and asked to just cover 1 month until things even out." Delia slid a cream pitcher across the table. "Let her say no without apologizing." Carla took a sip. "Or let her say yes, but with a clause." Sophie left 2 weeks later. Her train ticket to Boston was paid for. So was her first year of school, and the security deposit on her first apartment. A check rested in her bag with Delia's signature, written in sharp, black ink beneath the words, "For Independence." She hugged Delia tightly on the porch before dawn. "I don't know what to say," Sophie whispered. "Then say thank you," Delia said. "And go do the things they thought they deserved without doing the work." Sophie blinked back tears. "You really believe I earned this?" Delia nodded. "You earned what they assumed." They didn't talk about Maya and Travis anymore. They were background noise now, a footnote Delia refused to annotate. The last place Delia had left to visit was one she hadn't touched since the beginning. The rooftop restaurant. The invitation that started it all. She passed it on foot, midday, no occasion. Her coat caught in the wind, hair pulled back, gray binder replaced by a lighter bag and a steadier heart. She didn't stop, didn't glance up, didn't need to. She had dined on false promises once and served the check herself. She wasn't hungry anymore. At home, the mailbox held one envelope, cream-colored, embossed, familiar, an invitation, another dinner, different hosts, same pitch. Delia opened it without hesitation. "We'd be honored to have you join our donor circle to discuss the future of transitional equity funds for at-risk community partnerships." She smiled faintly, tossed it in the recycling, pulled out her laptop, opened a new file. Title, "The Cost of the Unasked Favor." She typed the first line. "They thought inviting me to their fancy dinner would be a charity act. The next morning, they found out the charity was over, and so was their mortgage. She didn't hit save. She didn't have to. She already owned the ending.